Biotech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy joins us now. Good morning, Vivek. You think there's some inside Silicon Valley who might be excited about the prospect of ownership by Elon Musk?
I think there's no doubt there's a small minority who does. I just think at the employee ranks of the company, Will, there's going to be three categories here. First, there's just going to be the company employees who for the last couple of years haven't been doing very much. And I think that's common with companies that have gone to remote work across the world. What Elon Musk could come in and do is just say, those employees, we're just going to get rid of them and save that money. Now, I think that's a good choice, but what I hope he does is there's going to be a bigger rank of the employees who disagree with the vision for the company, that believe the company should be a censorship-driven machine rather than a platform for free speech. And my suggestion to Elon, if he's running the company, is take the savings from the first group that you fire, take a third of that, and just pay the other ones to leave, because the company will be better off if you just pay the people who are otherwise going to be an infection sitting inside the company and not aligned around values like free speech to be able to stay there. And then there will be the minority who actually agrees with it, and I think that might be enough to propel the company forward.
But I'm interested in the board. I'm interested in the board and what they have revealed about themselves. Vivek, I want to show you this tweet from David Sachs. He's a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. He said, if the game is fair, Elon will buy Twitter. If the game is rigged, there will be some reason why he won't be able to. We're about to find out how deep the corruption goes. Elon Musk responded to that, by the way, with Indeed. So the question is it a reflection of corruption, which I think is so, for Twitter to reject this bid from Elon Musk?
Yeah, look, I think this is corruption of corporate America, full stop. This is just one symptom of it, Will. So first of all, the managerial class that sits on the board, they've played their classic playbook right now. They rejected the offer. In fact, they instituted a poison pill that would prevent Elon from single-handedly being able to acquire the company. Now, normally shareholders would be upset about that. They would be telling the board that actually you're turning down shareholder value. We could stand to make more money. We agree with Elon's vision. We want you to accept it. But the reason that we're not seeing it is that the people who pretend to be the shareholders, large institutions like Vanguard, which now is actually the largest shareholder of the company, not Elon, or BlackRock, or State Street, or Morgan Stanley, they pretend to be the shareholders when, in fact, the clients whose money they're managing, the everyday citizens of this country, disagree with the positions that those institutions take in representing their views to the board. So that is how deep this cancer goes. I do think it is a rigged system, but it's not just rigged at the board level. It's rigged at the level of who even gets to claim to be a shareholder of the company, where the real shareholders aren't heard, and these managerial class-based institutions like BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard are.
Well, there was a list of those board members published, by the way. It was fascinating how little stock in Twitter those board members actually held. So on the topic of how deep the corruption goes, Charlie Gasparino pointed this out. Here's a headline in the New York Post. Crazy Elon Musk making major push in Twitter bid, but now he's facing federal heat. Gasparino in the Post pointing out there's now an SEC investigation, the timing of which is the least suspicious. The minute he makes a bid for Twitter, the federal government takes an interest in Elon Musk.
Yeah, let me tell you how the waterfall works. First, the board tries to stop him. If they can't stop him, then the apparent shareholders, like the three institutions and four institutions I mentioned, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, et cetera, will try to stop him. If they can't stop him, they then delegate their dirty work to the other alphabet soup of the federal government bureaucracy. And this is happening regularly, where I effectively think the SEC at times works for institutions like BlackRock, where first they're passing ESG rules that make into law the kinds of illiberal values that BlackRock and others have been pushing in the private sector. Now, if they can't actually stop Elon Musk through the front door, they're going to use the federal regulators to do the dirty work by saying he didn't file his 13D correctly, an administrative piece of paperwork when you own over 5% of a company and have activist intentions, that he didn't report his filings correctly. They would not have gone after anybody else, but when push comes to shove, that's what they're going to resort to. And one way or another, they're not going to let this happen.
The employees, the board, the institutional investors, and the federal government standing against Elon Musk. How deep does the corruption go? Very deep. Vivek Ramaswamy, great to talk to you this morning.
Good to see you.